just confess that I am still suffering somewhat from the bug that never ends. And sometimes it means that when I talk a lot, I start coughing. Just be patient, I'll be back. Before I buy anything with a fragrance, I sniff it. Whether it's bath gel or kitchen cleaner, I want to know what the fragrance is and how strong it is. Some fragrances are seriously irritating to me, and so I usually buy unscented products when I can get them. So a few years ago, I was at a market, St. Augustine maybe, someplace else maybe. And there was a store someone had said I needed to go to as long as I was there and buy her some reserves. And so of course I had to sniff everything and I bought something for myself, and then I ran out, and so I reordered some. Well, in the package of the reorder were some samples of soap. One of them was pretty nice. One of them was frankincense. And one of them was just, I got rid of it. On Epiphany Sunday one year, when I was preaching about the Magi, and so the Magi give baby Jesus gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And so I thought it would be a great idea to hand around this package with a sample of frankincense in it. So it went around, and it even stayed in the little bag that it came in. By the time it had got to the back pews, I had lost my voice. Apparently, frankincense is one of those fragrances that I'm really sensitive to. It was nard, or spikenard, was another one of the fragrances that was very popular in the ancient times. You can still buy these oils. They still make them. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and nard. I just did a little research, and online you could buy a package of 3 of them, little bottles, maybe an inch or 2 inches tall, for about $30 for a little sample of the oil. It's an essential oil, nard is, with a woody, spicy fragrance, something like that of moss, it said. Similar to lavender, the claim is that it's a calming, relaxing fragrance. I don't do well with lavender, so I didn't order a sample. In ancient days, nard was often combined with frankincense and myrrh as an anointing for burial oil or cream. I don't know what the substance was. It was this fragrance, this nard, this kind of lavenderish stuff that Mary brought into the room to anoint Jesus' feet. Perhaps the dinner party was a celebration because Lazarus had been brought back to life. The men were lounging on soft benches, laughing and talking as they ate, telling stories, as Jesus always tells stories, and enjoying the meal that Martha had created for them. At some point, Mary came toward Jesus and began to pour this oil on his feet. She probably worked it into the cracks and calluses of his feet and massaged it in. Who doesn't like a foot massage, right? As any extra ran off or wouldn't work itself in, she wiped it up with her hair. That oil would have been good for her hair, too. As she did this ministry to Jesus, the men began to notice. First, they noticed the fragrance. Then they looked for the source of the fragrance. Judas spoke first, voicing what many were probably thinking. Why are you wasting that oil on Jesus' feet? It could have been sold to feed the poor. But Jesus replies, what she is doing will prepare me for my burial. I will not be much longer. but you will always have the poor to feed. That's a Pastor Lynn paraphrase, in case you didn't figure that out. So, even when I'm not preaching, which I was not planning on preaching this week, I usually look at the gospel text, usually on Saturday night when I'm finished with the sermon, or just to think ahead. When I look at the text that's coming for the following Sunday, and I kind of pray with it and work with it during the week, and usually I'll look at a couple of commentaries, no serious study, just looking to see how it might teach me, how Jesus might teach me something this week. And so, when Pastor Terry emailed Friday night, 11 o'clock, I was still up, which was amazing. I'm normally not up that late. I'm not paying attention to email that late. I said, let me think about it overnight. And then this sermon started blossoming in my head, so by the, I was awake a couple hours just thinking about it off and on. Thanks, Pastor Terry, you can tell him. I did tell him that, and I did email, yes, that the sermon had kept me up, actually. And what came to my mind was a commentary that I had seen about lavishness. The lavishness with which Mary takes this oil, this year's worth. So figure out, what do you make in a year? Let's say $50,000. That's a lot more than some people make, a lot less than others. But let's just say she took this oil worth $50,000 and started pouring it on Jesus' feet. Lavishness. So I was thinking about lavishness. And how do we lavishly anoint Jesus with what we do during the week? Do we lavish him with time? Or do we get up, say, good morning, Lord, and at the end of the day, good night, Lord, and is that it? Or do we actually spend some time in his presence? Do we give to Jesus as lavishly as he gives to us? As the Magi gave? Do we remember his life and death, his love outpoured for us, and give generously to him in response? And are we as lavish as Mary when we feed the poor? Jesus calls us to see him in the other, in people we encounter day to day. When we feed the poor, when we visit the sick and the home and the imprisoned, when we clothe the naked, when we give shelter to the homeless, do we give as lavishly to them as we might give to Jesus? Or do we judge people as Judas judged Mary? Do we say, you know, I'd give her $1 or $2, but she'd just spend it on drugs, so I'm not giving her anything. Definitely not lavish giving there. Do we say, I don't want homes for special needs adults? This is happening in my neighborhood. Do we say we don't want a home for special needs adults in our neighborhood? And do we say that because we don't want a business in our neighborhood, or because we don't want those people? No lavish welcome there. If I can turn the page. Do we buy brand names for ourselves and generics for the poor? How lavish is our sharing? So here's one example. I just if you think about those things. Here's one example of lavish sharing. Many years ago, Mary and I were at a weekend training together in Chicago. Mary was born in India and had lived in Michigan for many years, and she and I served together on the Women of the ELCA Synodical Board. That's how I know Mary. I think she lived in Kalamazoo, but maybe Jacksonville. It's been long enough, I don't remember exactly. But I think Kalamazoo. Every few years, Mary traveled back with her family to visit relatives in India. And maybe it was there that she really learned to feed the poor. One evening, we all went to a restaurant for supper, the whole group of 25 or 30 of us. The meal was abundant. But our rooms did not have refrigerators, so we sadly left the excess food on our plate. Normally, I would have taken it home and had it for lunch the next day, but we couldn't do that. Mary, however, asked for a to-go box. What are you going to do with a to-go box? You don't have a refrigerator. Oh, you just watch and see. So as we walked back to the hotel, Mary's looking down the alleys and found what she was looking for. It's a homeless person. And she said, "Would you like some supper?" And she gave her to-go box to this homeless person. For most of us, the leftover food was wasted. Couldn't do anything with it. But for Mary, it was a lavish feast to give to Jesus. Jesus lavishly gives himself to us. He teaches us how to love and how to live. Jesus gives to us lavishly as well. Can we, in return, lavish him with our attention, with our devotion? Can we offer to the poor and the oppressed, whoever they are in our community, that same lavish love and attention that Jesus gives to us?